Good evening, I'm David Nicholas. Next year on CMU Public Television, Representative Bruce Rendon joins me here on Capitol Report.
Welcome to Capitol Report, a weekly discussion with your elected officials on the issues and concerns that affect you.
Always good to have you with us. We welcome back to our program Representative Bruce Rendon, Republican from Lake City and representing currently in his second term, the 103rd District. Representative, good to see you again. Welcome back.
Well, David, it's always a pleasure to be with you.
Governor Snyder is still pushing for $1 billion per year targeting roads and bridges. This winter, as we talked about before the cameras rolled today, has caused everyone to hit the pause button and take a look at exactly how bad conditions have been. A Senate panel recently authorized $100 million in emergency spending to directly address shortfalls in both plowing budgets and to deal with the potholes. House panel agreed but voted to add $115 million onto that. As we sit down today, catch us up on where that compromised amount may be and what we may see moving forward.
Well, David, you're very correct on what you said there, but really now the debate goes on between our supplemental that we've come out with in the House versus the Senate's, and I think you'll see that go to conference committee. But back home, listening to my constituents, the taxpayers of the 103rd District, it has been the #1 issue. They're saying, let's just forget about tax credits. Let's put our money towards our roads. And we all know the winter we've been going through here, and I'm very concerned, coming from the construction industry, what we're going to see come spring.
Does that get us immediately then back to the subject of the $975 million surplus and the debate as to whether it would go, as you alluded, your constituents saying, all to roads, to schools, to some sort of tax relief, to the rainy day fund? Are people speaking with one voice that they would like to see that more than perhaps even this supplemental that you're speaking of go towards dealing with the road issue?
Well, I think between now and the first week of June, that discussion is going to take place. And really, the rainy day fund, I think we have to continue on the path of fiscal responsibility and continue to put some money away. You know, when I first took office in 2011, we were down to $2 million. That would have sustained Michigan for 30 minutes. And now we're near $600 million in that account. We need to continue that. It has everything to do with our bond rating. And in times of need of cash flow, we are able to take care of the state of Michigan. But I think there will be more discussions in that regard to put as much money. You know, the governor has recognized that if we leave this unchecked in the next 10 years, this could be a $25 billion hole.
Looking at that, though, there has not seemed to have been yet the proposal of where exactly and how we could sustain a level of $1.21 billion in that range over a 10-year stretch to deal with the roads. Yes, recognizing that it could be. So has there been... We're dealing with a crisis now, extraordinary conditions, and what we're expecting to be a much worse condition of the roads than we've seen in several winters into springs past. But what about the long term as to how we could potentially pay for something over a long term, let alone even taking the surplus now? How about over the long term?
David, I've been very proactive this past year, especially holding town halls with my road commissions and talking to the people, and many proposals were out there on how do we fix this problem for the long term. And I personally have been advocating 1 cent to sales tax. Our Pure Michigan program has been very successful, and we're bringing people here. And you know, I don't think they'd see a difference in that 1 cent tax as far as them coming here, but if they lose the front end of their car, I don't think they're coming back. So I think that would be the fairest way. That would raise about $1 billion, 1 penny. So that's something I could find myself supporting.
Raise it over a year's time? I mean, do the numbers translate that we could see that much of an increase within a single year, so that you would point to that and say that something along those lines would be sustainable then?
Yes.
The tourism industry they've got to be having mixed reactions, I would think. They certainly have not had a lack of snow, but with the extreme cold, have you heard from, especially through your mid and northern Michigan district counties, what they have said of this particular season, what kind of season it's been for them, given the very extreme conditions we've seen? Have they still been able to attract people out for the winter sports?
Well, David, back home listening to those folks, I can tell you it's been a good winter season for us. Yes, the cold has been a factor, but yet most of those folks that enjoy the winter sports, that doesn't hold them back. And really a lot of traffic in our communities up there, and between snowmobiling has been very successful, in the skiing. It's been a great season so far.
Good news then. What about the schools? Certainly higher heating costs, the number of days that our districts have lost, and that dovetails into that whole debate that we'll probably be getting into somewhat about the year-round schooling that's also on the table. But what sort of added incurred costs have the schools seen dealing with this?
Well, it has been a factor, and we've missed several days, and we're working on extending. Some of the schools have already taken on an extra week of school, but that has a huge effect on expense. For example, you could be looking at a $7,000 increase just on busing for a week, per day. I think it's around $6,700. It varies amongst school districts, but it's a huge factor. And there's a proposal that took place last year that one of the Representative Potvin has to increase the hours per day, and I think our schools could manage that. So that's an option that is out there.
What about this $2 million pilot program proposal? I know that was at least highlighted to say this would start looking at what schools would need to put in air conditioning systems and so forth if we were to start to move towards a year-round school. How expansive? $2 million doesn't sound like a lot if you're talking about over 500 districts. Are there any more firm details as to where some of these districts are that might be getting some of that pilot program money if it goes forward? Mm-hmm.
As far as more firm details, I'm not sure of that, but I will say that if we extend the school year, maybe cut that from about 3 months down to, say, 2 months. I think there's some merit to that, especially what we've seen the last few years when we've been using all our winter days up.
And would there, though, be any disproportionate effect on the districts, especially through the central or northern or more rural areas, when you talk about the kids coming from the family farm? This has been one of the, I have not heard that much, but I think this is going to be a part of the debate, because the school calendar as it sits right now does allow them that time to go home and be home, do that kind of work. What if we start moving towards a year-round calendar? How would we see that impacted?
Those are the pluses and minuses that have to be weighed in. That is a very valid point. And in our rural areas, and especially in the ag industry, our children are very much involved in the operation on a daily basis. So that has to be considered.
The post-Labor Day start, I don't know how much has been firmed up about this calendar. That was put in place as supposed to be a boost to the tourism industry. Does this year-round calendar move us off of that in terms of, again, getting back to the impact we'd see for tourism dollars circulating through the state?
Well, I know I truly believe that we need to keep it where it's at, the post-Labor Day, and I think that's been a good move that we took back on. In my day, that's where it was at, but a lot of things to consider in this whole situation, and I don't know as we'll see that move real fast.
Have they said, is there, for the pilot program then, do we have a timetable as to when it would start? And are they looking at that for this fall to try and shift some districts, or what do we know about that as proposed at this point?
Well, I must say, David, I'm not sure where that pilot program is at as far as a start date.
Okay. It was also recently pointed out to me that any reference to higher education money should be defined as a partial funding restoration. I have it written that way specifically, not an allocation increase, because we have seen funding cuts that have us at or below where funding levels were in 1999. We, of course, are on the campus right now of Central Michigan University, but the community colleges that are throughout our entire central and northern Michigan area as well. How do you view the efforts for the state to work back towards some sense of fiscal health, if possible, or if needed, to reach past funding levels when we look at that higher education budget?
Well, David, I find it through a lot of the discussions we've had about people on the other side of this issue as far as funding our schools, of wanting to go back where we're at. And I think you will find that truly we have increased funding to our schools, and I think the governor's laid out a proposal to, in the budget, to increase funding there again. And I think you will see some of that go on. So I'm not so sure that we're not in a better place today than we're at. We got to keep in mind about our enrollment situation. And fortunately, the last 2 years, we have seen Michigan's population come back and increase. And that was due to a lot of changes we made in our tax structure.
We're still in the early part of this current session, the 2013-2014 legislative session. Some initiatives that you were directly a part of, either as a sponsor, primary supporter, and the like. The first of those was introduced back in December, now just recently passed within the last week or so, House Bill 5191. What can you tell us about that?
Well, this is really is truly a private property rights issue. And I found out that you could ride a snowmobile, and we're talking about your own private land, without a helmet. But if you were riding your RV, you were breaking the law because it says you have to have a helmet on. And this inconsistency in the law has created some great problems. I'll give you an example, a personal example. On my farm, in a different section of the law, you are allowed to, during the process of farming, you are allowed to ride your RV without a helmet. It's a legal piece of farm equipment. But the minute I got my chores done and I went in and put my camo on and I went back to my woods without that helmet, I was breaking the law. I've had this—
The difference between farming duties and recreational use.
Yes, and I've had constituents ticketed on their own property for riding their ORV around the house. And it's created huge problems. And I talked to law enforcement, and they agreed we need consistency in the law. So we have recently passed out of the House, first out of committee, but out of the House, 99-9, this new bill, which would include the landowners, their family members, and invited guests, to allow them to ride their ORV on their private property without a helmet. And I look for it to move fairly quickly through the Senate committee and become a public act.
How close would, and this obviously gets into minute details with a lot of parcels, but when we look then at the laws as they apply to the other county roads, area roads that can go through any township, and how closely private property might butt up against some of those areas, is there still some room where we could see some issues in terms of what's going to be enforced and what's not, unless somebody literally has a chalk marker out there and knows where some of those lines are?
Well, you can't legislate against every situation. This is on your own land, so you could be ticketed for riding without a helmet on somebody else's land. But I want to say this. In our legal trails that we have for RVs, many of those have easements over private property, and this law does not address that. You cannot ride without a helmet on a legal trail when you're crossing private land. But this is strictly your own private property.
You said the vote was 99-9 in the House. What's the early indication to your colleagues in the Senate, and what types of support you might expect to see on the other side?
I think it will be hugely supported over in the Senate. This is really, it's a common sense bill that gives law enforcement some some consistency in the law. So I think it will be overwhelmingly supported.
And has the governor given any indication watching this? Has this been among those that he would mention, saying, yes, when it gets to my desk,
Yeah.
I will deal with it?
I think we will see the governor support this bill.
Another piece of that, shall we say, unfinished business, or at least prior to the new year, was House Bill 5036. This was introduced back in October. First of all, let us know what this is and then catch us up to date on the status of where this particular piece is.
This is a bill in regards to veterans' transcripts for community college academic credits. And we have 28 community colleges here in Michigan, and not always do we see a veteran makes an application at his community college and he is asked for his official transcript to see if there are some academic credits he could receive. So this bill will change that and require our community colleges, and keep in mind we have several doing a very good job in that regard. Some have it listed, but it's outdated as far as asking that question, and some don't do it at all. So we want consistency that as we see up to 10,000 veterans coming back per year, that transition, we need to do all we can to try and help them make that transition into a job, and they need further education. So really it asks the college to, when they apply, to ask the question, could we get your official transcripts and see if you might be afforded some college credit. It's not mandating that they give the credit, but it is asking them to ask the question to see if they could give academic credits.
Anything else on that front? Because as we have seen, and you pointed to the numbers that are continuing to come home from these spots overseas, any other issues, especially from the committees that you're a part of that address these veterans issues so directly, of other bills that have anything else related to, or other issues that are being brought to you that the committee may be looking to address when it comes to our military veterans transitioning back into to society back here at home?
Well, along with this bill, it is asking, there's another bill asking that they have a checkbox on their application. Have you been in the military? Yes or no? But really, we have passed several pieces of legislation, I having one in regards to their experience in the military and getting credit. Mine was in regards to becoming a licensed builder. That's part of my background. And what that bill did, if they have a affidavit signed by a superior officer and honorably discharged and have this experience in the military, they can get the 60 hours of pre-licensing education waived. They still have to take the test. And we have done this in many areas: plumbing, pipe fitters, security, a lot of areas. And I think you will see some more of this come forward.
Well, I think that's a good point, because we can remember back, all of us having seen, especially the commercials, the recruiting and enticement to go into military service, talking about the experience that one could gain, but has it always, and it sounds clearly that it hasn't always been a case where you can take that training, come back and literally get credit for it, or be better suited to go into the workforce right away, rather than having to then perhaps go through an entire academic program to get a license behind your name to do whatever the task might be.
Right. We have to keep in mind that our veterans, when they come home, what a transition it is to come back and get back into the working force here. And a lot of the veterans want to distance themselves sometimes from their experience in the military, and a lot of them really don't know what they're qualified for. And we need to get this out there, and that's what we've been working on.
Anything else then that you would say would put into that category of, well, we got it started, we'd like to see it through? Anything that's pending on any of the levels from any of the committees, again, as either a primary author or a supporter in terms of legislation that, as we begin the wind down through this term that would come at the end of the year, that you would hope would see its way through to final passage? What's still out there?
Well, I would like to make this comment. I'm on my second term on Regulation Reform Committee, and we have addressed over 1,500 rules and regulations that we've got done away with up to now. And that, along with some of the taxation changes we've made, has really helped business make a profit and hire people. And you will see that continue. That's a big issue. That committee is very, very busy in that regard, and I think that is truly the right direction we need to take to keep Michigan working.
A lot of us follow along the basic procedures of how bills get introduced, passed by the other chamber, compromised, signed. If we go back to that rather significant thing, although you're only talking about a cent or two on the percentage on the sales tax, is that within the normal procedure? Do we look at the supermajorities? This is sort of the Civics 101 update for if we're looking at something that would have that much of a potential change on the overall structure of the economy, would that be regular procedure? Take us to school and let us know what that might do if we were to see something like that introduced and seen its way through, maybe as a way of paying for roads, for instance.
Ultimately, it would be the will of the people, and they would get the opportunity to say yes or no on that issue. And I think it will be very telling this spring. If you go down the road today, if you notice every so often you have an expansion joint, they have been pyramided for months. And that's a sign of what is to come. And I'm hoping that the public will realize we do have to do something. At the same time, it is very important that they know that in Lansing that we're spending their money wisely. But this $25 billion hole is potentially, it is there. And we need to do something. The issue's been around long before I was ever in the legislature.
What is the pulse? What are people, because a year ago, you and all of our guests were coming through about the time that the governor was out on the road, no pun intended, making the pitch for this, and we had things such as the proposal to increase the fuel tax or the large rate increase that was going to go towards vehicle registration, all things that were being put out on the table. How do you think the support would fly for this versus those in terms of, as you say, ultimately the voters deciding we're going to do this or not?
Well, I can tell you back last fall even, overwhelmingly, our citizens recognized and agreed we must fix our roads. But it wasn't just the legislature that couldn't come to the conclusion. Polls were run and just surveys were taken, and overwhelmingly people weren't willing to spend the money to do it. They said you need to find it within. Well, today our debate is over what do we do with the extra money we've found through good budgeting. When I got there is what are we going to do to save Michigan? So that's a good thing, but at the same time, everyone that has felt the pain of sacrifice is there now asking for more money. So it's the citizens have to speak, and that's where, if this would be the proposal, they would get that opportunity.
To bring this full circle to where we began then in our last minute and a half or so, if we're talking about the $100 million as proposed by the Senate or the additional 115 as and the compromise from the House and Senate versions, is that money right now that's being proposed to come from the surplus or elsewhere if we look at even the stopgap money before we readdress or continue to address the long-term funding?
Well, it's to come from the surplus at this point, yes, the proposal.
And then how soon do you think that compromise will take place?
I think we will have some direction within the next couple of weeks.
Does that mean you're predicting a thaw within the next couple of weeks? And
No,
maybe I don't...
no. On what's proposed right
right,
now,
yeah.
I think we'll have...
But the problem clearly is going to be coming out there and
Yes.
be very evident very soon with what we've already seen.
If we've got a $1.2 to $1.5 billion hole, $215 million is not going to get it. So anyways, it will help. Really, this all started to shore up. Most of our counties have went through their winter money. And we need to help them, and it's an immediate situation.
Well, that debate then will continue, and the ideas, I'm sure, continue to be floated around as to how to deal with this and work on the budget and so forth as that moves forward. All those things still ahead. We appreciate your time, as always, for coming in to catch us up to date on what is going on in your district and elsewhere, and good to see you again.
Well, nice to see you, David. Thank you.
And thank you, as always, for joining us here on Capitol Report. We've been talking with State Representative Bruce Rendon of the 103rd District. A reminder that our program will be seen again tonight in the overnight rotation here on CMU Public Television, and within the next few days also going to our website, where you'll find all of our episodes to date and moving forward for Capitol Report, and that's at WCMU.org. Click on TV and click on WCMU Productions. For our technical director, Chris Ogazali, and all of our crew, I'm David Nicholas. Good to see you, and we'll talk again.
You've been watching Capitol Report. Join us again as your elected officials speak to your concerns on current issues.